Oh God, we're all gonna die from courtesy. It's contagious. Hello, and welcome to the Atari Video Computer. That was a good one, man. Wow, I just sort of pulled that because it seemed like it might be funny, and it was way better than I thought it was going to be. That song, those uniforms. Oh man, that was a good pre-roll video for sure. One for the ages. So, hello, welcome to the Atari Video Computer stream here on twitch.tv/mockduck. Thank you so much for being here. I guess I should be kind and courteous, regardless of whether you're yelling at me about how many burgers you want. Hello. This is the last show for the next couple of months. So let me start with the bad news. Well, it's not really bad news. So in June and July, I'm a single dad. I have my son with me, and just don't have time to do video streaming when he's around. Plus, he doesn't want to have to sit and watch me do this kind of thing. So I'm taking the next couple of months off, and I will be back after Gen Con, because right away after I bring him back, I go off to Gen Con in Indianapolis in early August, and so this show and the other shows I do will return in early August after Gen Con. So this is the last Atari Video Computer stream for the last couple of months. If you've been enjoying it, I thank you so much for tuning in every week. It's really nice to delve into this stuff and give myself an outlet to just get nerdy about Atari stuff with you, which is what we are going to do today. I will say this, though, there is a chance that we'll be doing a little bit of streaming here in the coming months. I do have a 6-year-old son. YouTube is his television, and he sure does want to be a live streamer. So my guess is we might be seeing things like Minecraft and that sort of thing on this channel, if we see anything at all in the next couple of months. Get nerdy? Yeah, well, the difference is I can talk, and either people can choose to listen or they can change the channel, and I'm not bothering people around me with obscure Atari data. So what are we going to talk about today? We are going to talk about classic compilations, the dangers of nostalgia, basically how Atari got back into the nostalgia game, and then we're also going to wrap up the show with kind of some casual gaming. I'm calling it planes and trains and automobiles. We're going to delve into some racing games and delve into forms of transportation to wrap up this lovely, lovely season of the Atari Video Computer stream. I will say this, we are continuing to raise money for the Maple Farm Sanctuary. This is your last chance to donate for a little while. So if you would like to donate a few bits, if you would like to subscribe, although like I say, I'm taking the next couple months off, so maybe not the best time to subscribe. If you want to follow any of those Amazon affiliate links, all that money after Twitch and PayPal get their cut goes to the Maple Farm Sanctuary. I may choose a different charity with the next season just to kind of spread the love around a little bit, but we'll see how that goes. For now, though, the Maple Farm Sanctuary takes care of abused, abandoned, neglected farm animals. They have a lovely farm near Mendon, Massachusetts, and you can find out more at maplefarmsanctuary.org. Okay. Let us get to it here a little bit. So I wanted to actually start by talking a little bit about nostalgia. I was reading a marketing thing this past week, which was talking a little bit about nostalgia as it relates to Dungeons and Dragons. And the theory was that after about 25 years of generally being something that was part of your childhood and young adult life, you get nostalgia for it. And although that may be a little bit of a marketing buzzword, I do think there's some truth to that. Because if you think about my own life, right, I graduated high school in 1993, and it was around 98, 08, yeah, about 25 years. Is it 25? Is that right? 1993, 03, 13. Yeah, about 25 years from now, I am full-blown on nostalgia to kind of my childhood and all that sort of thing. So about 20, 25 years. And so it goes with reselling things to people. I wanted to talk a little bit about how Atari has had a second life after its original console came out. We'll go into some of the games and some of the compilations. I'll give you some tips and some reviews, tell you what to keep an eye out for, what's good, maybe what's not so good, and just some general tips and advice for that. So, there were some Atari games that were released for systems post-Atari, like, say, the NES, the Genesis, that sort of thing. But it really wasn't until the PlayStation 1 era that Atari got back into the nostalgia game. Now, Atari themselves, went bankrupt largely in the late 80s and were picked up eventually by Infogrames, rather, a French company, at around the turn of the millennium. I'd have to check Wikipedia for the exact dates, but I'm going off the top of my head that Atari had one last-ditch effort around the late 90s, and then was sold to Infogrames at around 2001, 2002, I think, and went into... Is that right? Let me actually look that up. It then went independent as the Atari Interactive, I guess it was about 2003-ish. So let me see, Atari Infogrames. Atari SA. Yeah, so basically, yeah, that's really about Infogrames rather than Atari. But anyway, I guess I'll just sort of not delve into that too much. Yeah, in 2003, in 2001, Hasbro sold Hasbro Interactive and its subsidiaries to Infogrames. So I was right, 2001. It was then renamed Infogrames Interactive. In 2003, they reorganized its subsidiaries into Atari-branded names, and then went into Atari Interactive Incorporated. And then in 2003, Infogrames officially changed their name to Atari Incorporated, and that's what they are now. Atari Interactive Incorporated. They did file for bankruptcy in 2013. They are still around, however, as a French company, and have a very small staff of employees, around a dozen or so, and they continue to go on. It was in... Yeah, I guess it's a little too complicated to get into it because there was a lot of holding companies throughout the 90s. But anyway, so in the late 90s, for the PlayStation 1 era, Atari really decided now's the time to start to cash in on this stuff. Keep in mind that you could actually buy an Atari on a store shelf as late as 1990. The last Atari 2600 game that came out was actually in 1991, well after the NES had completely clobbered the market and was taken over everything. And of course, by 91, nobody was really buying Atari so much. It was all about the Nintendo, the Genesis. Even if you wanted to get more obscure, it was like the TurboGrafx 16 or PCs, computers at that point. So not too many people were really buying Ataris, but they were still making games all the way through until 1991. So there was a gap from really the NES Genesis era until the PlayStation, where if you wanted to play Atari, you probably had an Atari. And you could still play the games, and they were just fine. I mean, they were, 10, 15 years old at this point, but that's fine. It wasn't until the PlayStation 1 that Atari decided to get back into the game with a series of re-releases. And I actually I was trying to hunt it down in a box, but I've got a couple of them. In particular, there were two notable ones. They came out both for the PlayStation 1 and the Game Boy Advance and the Nintendo, or I guess it would have been 64 at that point. It was pre-GameCube, so yeah, 64. And they came out with a Pong first, and then they came out with an Asteroids. Later on, they came out with a Missile Command and a few others, but it was really the Pong that kicked off the nostalgia wave. Now, these were not the classic Pong games. They were reimaginings. They were trying to refresh the gameplay for a PlayStation era, and were frankly not too successful. The Asteroids one was more successful than the Pong. Pong wasn't terrible. I actually played it quite a bit. Like I said, I've got the disc. I just couldn't find it right before the show here. But it had this thing where you were on a 4:3 TV. Keep in mind this was before widescreen televisions. And it was Pong, although they had things like power-ups and that, a little bit like Arkanoid. But the whole thing just kept on moving. The screen had this I don't know why they did it, but it just kept on rotating back and forth and spinning and all that while you were playing it. So it was frankly kind of a nauseating thing to play back in the day on your 4:3 television. Asteroids was a little more standard. It had a graphics upgrade, basically an overlay of pixels and sound effects and things like that. But the gameplay was largely intact. They were mildly successful, but not super successful. And they didn't really have the classic games on them. I believe Asteroids might have, but I know Pong certainly did not. And it really wasn't until, I believe it was around 1997, 1998, that one of the very first complete packages of Atari rebranded games came out. It came out for the PlayStation 1, and if I recall correctly, also for the Dreamcast. That same compilation was later released with a slightly expanded roster for the PlayStation 2, and has really formed the basis of a lot of the emulation that has happened for Atari games since then. They didn't use Stella at the time. Not actually sure how they emulated it back in the day, but it was a pretty good game. Let me see if I can find a picture of it here. Yeah, here we go. Actually, here we go. That's cool. Let me see if I can pop this up first. This is that Pong that I was talking about. Let's see if I can get it to display. There we go. So that was the Pong. It's back, the next level, and it was Atari. You could see Atari had actually gone through a different branding at this point. And the Pong, like I said, it just wasn't great. It wasn't terrible, but it just wasn't great. And then soon afterwards, they came out with... Oh, there was also, they did a Breakout as well. So Missile Command and a Breakout. And then I never actually played either of those two. But the one that I mostly played was this one. And I'm going to put this one up on the screen as well. This one you're probably familiar with. You've maybe seen the box. It was really big at the time, like I say, not just for the PlayStation 1, but they largely used the same branding for the PlayStation 2 and a lot of other things as well. This was a really nice collection, actually, for the PlayStation 1 and other compilations that came out at the time. Let me see if I can actually look up real quick to see... Atari Anniversary Edition. It came out, yes, for the Dreamcast, the PlayStation, and the PC in 2002 on the Game Boy Advance. And that was, this is from Wikipedia, this information. And it's really a repackaging of PC titles that were released in 1999 under 2 volumes. And I don't actually see anything here about the emulation of how they did it. Yeah, they don't actually get into the technical details on that. But anyway, that was a really popular one. That was still one of the most faithful emulations of these games. Now, it was PlayStation 1, so you had the PlayStation 1 controller, or Dreamcast, or whatever. But in terms of the sound, the look, the feel, this was really one of the very first times that you got the actual arcade games that you could play successfully on your PC in a way that didn't have drawbacks. Even if you were looking at some of the arcade re-releases that came out, like, this isn't an Atari game, but Galaga for the NES and things like that, they were close to the arcades, but they didn't quite match it. It really wasn't until the PlayStation came out that they finally had enough power to be able to run these things pretty natively in a way that was successful. Anyway, highly recommend that if you do track down the Atari Anniversary Edition, like I say, late 90s, early 2000s, you can get it cheap, because PlayStation 1 games, although they're getting more expensive, they're not really in the collector's market as much as, say, the NES and that is right now. So now's a good time to pick that stuff up if you happen to have it. The next one I wanted to pass along it wasn't just Atari getting into the nostalgia games, but this was one of the best games for the PlayStation 1. This is Activision Classic Games for the Atari 2600. Activision got into the Atari repackaging. Now, I have the greatest hits version rather than the original release of it, but heck, it is good. You can see it's got the original black disc that the PlayStations all had back in the day. Yep, nice little advertisement for the Asteroids re-release that came out. And this is one of the best classics too. Now keep in mind this, PlayStation 1 games will play on a PlayStation 2 and a PlayStation 3. It wasn't until the PlayStation 4 that PlayStation 1 games were finally deprecated in technology. The reason for that is they don't actually have a CD laser in the PlayStation 4. Yep, you cannot put your CDs into your PlayStation 4. I remember being more than a little bit shocked at that time. But it's got really all the classic Activision games, all 30 of them. It's got Atlantis, Barnstorming, Boxing, Chopper Command, Crackpot, Cosmic Commuter, Dolphin Dragster, Enduro, Fishing Derby, Freeway, Frostbite, Grand Prix, Hero, Ice Hockey, Kaboom, Keystone Capers, Laser Blast, Mega Man, Pitfall, of course, Black Attack, River Raid 1 and 2, Sequest, Skiing, Skyjinx, Spider Fighter, Stampede, Star Master, and Tennis. The only one that's really missing is Pitfall 2 is not on there. And I think that was because that was actually released around 87. I'm not sure. I assume Activision released it, but it was missing a few games. But it's got all the best ones, and I played countless hours of tennis and that sort of thing with, well, I guess it was my girlfriend/wife at the time. But yeah, a really good compilation for the PlayStation 1. Still well worth getting today because, like I said, you can play it on PlayStation 1, 2, or 3 if you have it. And it's cheap, and it's a really high-quality collection. It's got all the nice box art, really good presentation, and all these games just play really, really well. For the PlayStation 2, they came out with the next one. This one you'll see in basically everything from the Game Boy Advance to the GameCube to, I believe, Dreamcast even got a version of it. The Xbox did. PlayStation 2. I believe there's a version of this for the PlayStation 3 even as well. It's really the same repackaging that has been around since this version here, which is 2004 on this one. This is 85 total games, which is 18 of their arcade games and 67 of their 2600 games. And this really set a pattern that you see even to this day on the Atari releases. A mix of the most popular arcade games, a mix of the most popular 2600 games. They put a big number on the front. There's far more 2600 games than there are arcade games, but they do have a lot of the basics here. Overall, the Atari Anthology is pretty recommended. It's a DVD rather than a CD, which is kind of nice. Unfortunately, the PlayStation 2 is not, their games are not as backwards compatible as the PlayStation 1 is. So unless you happen to have a backwards compatible PS3 or a PS2, of course, hanging around, you're kind of out of luck. But it's got a nice package here as well. And the other thing that this one has that the earlier one did not have, and it's really because they have the ability to do that with the DVD, is they have bonus materials. Let me see if I can figure out what they have here. Yeah, interviews, box art, classic manual scans, a photo gallery, and more. So it's really neat. I actually, if I had thought a little bit more about it, I would have hooked up my PlayStation 2 to the television that I've got, and we could have played a little bit of those interviews. But this was one of the first times that you got internet-style video interviews with Atari founders for one of their released games. And it's pretty nice. You know, of course, they talk to Nolan Bushnell and David Crane and things like that. But there's some really nice compilation material here as well. They also offered a different version for the era as well, which has a time challenge mode, a trippy mode, which is basically kind of a drugged-out Vectrex style mode, a fast mode, sort of almost an NES remix style where you could play 3 games in a row. They had a double speed version, and what have you. Anyway, it's a pretty good compilation, and again, I would actually recommend the Atari Anthology if you are still collecting for PS2. If you happen to have this hanging around too, it's not worth much now. PlayStation 2 games are just starting to become collectible but they can still be had for dirt cheap. I mean, dirt cheap. You can't get. I sold actually just today a box of just kind of doubles and junk games and things that I had laying around. I sold a box of, I think it was about 17 of them for $50. So that went like that. People just picked them up. They were mostly junk sports games and things like that I wasn't interested in. But you can get this stuff cheap. I bet you could get a copy of this on a flea market for $5-10, if that. And this has some really nice ones too. Besides all of your classic arcade games like, Centipede, Asteroids. Actually, I have it in the box here. Let's see. Centipede, Asteroids, Battlezone, Missile Command, Tempest. Basic ones there. They had a bunch of 2600 games, including some things like Demons, Diamonds, Haunted House, Lunar Lander, Major Havoc, Millipede, Casino, multiple versions of Centipede. They even had Quadron, which is a really rare game for a cart. So this also is notable because it delved a little deeper into the Atari catalog to include some games that are fairly, if you were to buy them in cart form, would start to be fairly rare. By this point, they started to realize that, there was a collector's market out there for these Atari carts, and some of them were easier to find than others. Like, for example, Sword Quest Waterworld. Or, like I say, Quadron, which is still one of the more expensive Atari carts out there because it uses voice commands and came out late. And things like that. So they packaged all this stuff together, and it's a really nice compilation as well for the PlayStation 2. You do have a few things like loading times that are an issue and what have you. But overall, it wasn't too bad. So you saw basically the variations of those three compilations still get released and re-released and re-released for PC, for the PlayStation 2, the PlayStation 3, Nintendo consoles. Like by that point, the Dreamcast was pretty much dead, but whatever. Let me see if I can get autofocus working again. There we go. I'm going to switch before I go into the more modern console era, which is really in some ways the golden period here, by delving into one good and one bad. We talked a couple weeks back for the PlayStation Flashback Portable, which is an amazing, cheap little consumer level device that can be had for $10-15 in the used market, and it'll play virtually anything for the 2600 because you can put an SD card into it and it'll run bin files, which are like the basic ROM files for 2600 games. So for about $15-20, you can get 1,000 or more classic Atari 2600 games for this device. Now, it doesn't have the arcade games, but it does have a lot of that sort of thing as well. Atari's had a bit of a rougher time on the portable market. There was a compilation for, I believe, the DS and that, which was okay. And then for the PlayStation Portable, I was really excited when this came out. It was called Atari Classics Evolved. This came out in 2007, so about 11 years ago. And on one hand, it looks awesome, right? Because they show like a version of here's Pong, and then here's, I wonder if I can get it in the... Yeah, here's Pong, and then here's Pong Evolved. There's Missile Command, and there's Missile Command Evolved. So it would be really cool, but this suffers really badly in one era, to the point that, although, God, do I wish there was a good Atari compilation for the PSP and Vita. This ain't it, and this is all we got. Here's the problem. It has a lot of the classic arcade games, like Asteroids, Asteroids Deluxe, Battlezone, Centipede, Lunar Lander, Millipede, Missile Command, Pong, Breakout, Tempest, Warlords, and then Atari 2600, unlockable. So, although it theoretically has over 50 unlockable Atari 2600 titles, the only way you can get to them is by doing really, really well at the arcade games. And I mean like platinum trophy level. Like, say, I wonder if they have anything about how to actually do this one. I think they show it in the thing. They don't show it in the manual here. To unlock Atari 2600 games, you must earn all 4 rewards for each of the main games. So you don't just have to do good at one game, but you got to get all 4 of their trophies, which is, in some cases, virtually impossible. I don't know if you've ever been able to achieve an arcade-style high score on Lunar Lander, Missile Command, Pong, Tempest, Warlords, but we're not talking about easy games. We're talking about really difficult challenges. So I bought this thinking that I could play the 2600 games, since there are more than 50 on here. And I'm not terrible at Atari. If I'm good at any games, it's going to be these old classics. And for the life of me, I have not been able to unlock one single game. I've been able to get as much as 3 of the 4 challenges on some of the games, but on every single one of them, there's I believe there was one for Asteroids Deluxe, which is get to level 5 without firing a shot. Okay. There was another one, if I recall correctly, which was shoot no more than 10 times to get past the first level. Things like that. And so it's frustrating. So nowadays, I always looked out, I was like, surely the internet can help me with this, right? There's got to be a secret code. There's got to be a way to just plug in something and unlock all this stuff, right? No. There's a little tear coming down my cheek here. I played way too many hours of this darn thing. Atari Classics Evolved on a UMD. Yeah, UMDs, huh? Those are big. Anyway, I cannot at all recommend Atari Classics Evolved, which is a bummer because this is what you got, really, for the DS, even up to the 3DS, I think. Let me see if they have something better that I don't know about. Yeah, they have an Atari Greatest Hits, actually, for the DS, which isn't terrible as well. If I'm looking at that... Actually, looks like there was several of them over the years. 2 volumes for the DS, so that's not terrible. So I guess that's probably something worth mentioning there as well. And of course, the DS games play on the 3DS, so although you're not going to have the greatest level of stuff, and looking at it real quick, it looks like it's your basic 13 to 15 games, Asteroids, Battlezone, Centipede, Tempest, etc., etc. But anyway, that's what we got for the PSP, and largely there's a version of this for all the other portables. Thankfully, there was one that came out here, and I also have this somewhere, but I've lost it in my boxes. So I've got it on the Vita. This came out for the PlayStation Portable originally as well, and this is an Activision Classics. See if I can get the exact name of it. Activision Hits Remixed is what it's called. There's a couple of really fun things to mention about the Activision Hits Remixed. First off, let me see if I can bring this up to the speaker. I don't know if you can hear that old 80s classics, but for some reason, on this Activision Hits Remix, they decided to pay for music licensing to get a whole bunch of 80s music on here. And you can play it like a radio station. So when you're playing your Atari games, you can play Don't Fear the Reaper and all these 80s hits, which... I think they were attempting to try to emulate an arcade-like experience, but man, it's funny as heck. I love it. But it also has game sharing, select games, options. You can turn off the thing if you want as well, but there's things like sound. And then the best thing about it, let me see if I can get it over to there. They have a piece on chronology on any one of the games. You go into this menu and you can find out about the game. It has the instructions, a little bit of the history, the marketing of it, and that sort of thing. But it also, let me see if I can... You can go to the crediting of who all made all this stuff, which is really nice. But then the other thing you can do is if you go into a game, like let's say, let me see if I can think of one that I know has it. This has Pitfall 2, by the way. I'll go over the games list here in just a second. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Pitfall has got it. So, if you go into Pitfall, you can do things like put it full screen, mini screen, actual pixel accurate. You can change the color, put up the HUD, and do all sorts of really nice things with it. Yeah, so you can expand it out to the full size of this thing as well. And by hitting select, you can change color and black and white if you want to do that. And I'm trying to see somewhere on here. I'm not sure if I can find it or not. I'm trying to figure out. Oh yeah, media. Here we go. So they have things like, there's your high scores. Let's see if I can show you. Unlockables, the box of it, and the cartridge, which is kind of nice because you can actually see, for example, what these cartridges look like. Although, amusingly, they don't actually have the graphics version for Demon Attack. They just have the blue label on it. But it's a really nice compilation of these, and this is for the PSP, and it plays on Vita as well. Here we go. You can see the equivalent of the little box art on it as well. But even more amusingly is the unlockables, which Demon Attack doesn't have, but I'm pretty sure like Pitfall does. Yeah, this one's got like a manual, the cartridge, the box, and unlockables. And you unlock things by scoring a certain amount of points and what have you. Unfortunately, I don't have it unlocked on here, just because I haven't played it in a while. But if you score at least like 12,000 points or 20,000 points, they're fairly reasonable. And unlike this one, you can get unlockables like classic commercials, including like the classic Jack Black commercial for Pitfall. You can see interviews and kind of advertising brochures and all that sort of thing. So it's a really nice collection, actually. Although it does have an unlocking mechanic as well to see some of the commercials on that. But they don't unlock the games. And the games themselves are a really robust set of games. Includes things like relatively rarities that you don't see in all the other classics, like Pitfall 2, Plaque Attack, Private Eye, Pressure Cooker, River Raid 2. It has Robot Tank. Star Master Thwacker, even, which is a really rare one. Beam Rider, which I love. And a whole bunch of other really good games as well. Cosmic Commuter, Decathlon, Enduro, etc., etc. A whole lot of good games for this thing. Even as Hero, which is a later period Atari thing. So anyway, that's you can also get that cheap digitally. You can get it for the Vita, for the PSP. Because it's part of the PS1 Classics, or PSP Classics, I believe it even plays on the PlayStation 3 and 4 as well. So it's a nice cheap buy if you want to get all of that. However, keep in mind that around the same time, in the early 2000s, one other big thing came about that really challenged a lot of these crappy to good compilations. And that was called emulators. I would actually need to look up the history. Let's see. Stella emulator history. It's open source. It runs on most major platforms. It was originally written in 1996 and is now maintained by someone else, written in C++. So yeah, in the late 90s, in addition to these things coming about, we had the internet that exploded. Things like MAME, Stella, Nesticle, if you recall that one. There was a whole bunch of emulators that came out that challenged the commercial viability of releasing a lot of these things. At the time, they were pretty controversial. You know, Atari was like, we want to sell you Asteroids. We don't want you to play Asteroids on MAME or from Stella. But in the long run, these things have been extremely valuable resources. Not just because they're useful for things like the Flashback Portable, not just because Atari, frankly, has utilized the expertise that is used to create these bin files and ROMs to put to their own compilations, but game preservation has been really important for these as well. So even though they maybe started in controversy, nowadays, the fact that you can even buy from Walmart a flashback portable that's just like, yeah, just put Stella on it, kind of goes to show that Atari is generally pretty cool with things like Stella nowadays. So that came about really and challenged a lot of these compilations. You know, although I really, really do like it and would encourage you to purchase one, especially if you have a PlayStation 1, 2, or 3, are you going to pay $50 for this when you could just download all that stuff from Stella? Now, of course, the difference is this is on a console. Stella's on a computer. It is a face-forward rather than a couch experience. So I have always purchased these kind of things because I like the classic kind of laid-back console approach to it. So anyway, throughout the 2000s, we got Stella really just became stellar. I mean, there's nothing Stella can't do at this point. There's a reason that there's only one Atari 2600 emulator out there, and it's Stella, because it's perfect. It does everything you want it to do, or near perfect. And everyone supports it, and it's open source. MAME is pretty good, too, for a lot of the arcade ports. But we actually live in a good commercial time nowadays. In addition to things like all the emulators that are fantastic for people who like to fiddle with things, you can also buy really great compilations. It's really in the past 5 years or so that I think the companies have finally got it right in terms of compilation. They offer a ton of games. They're emulated perfectly. They give you various graphic options in terms of pixel perfect versus upscaled for your monitors. Original box art, original arcade bevels, if you want them, if you don't want them. You can play online nowadays with people on a lot of these games. And so, in particular, I wanted to call out two that are currently available on the market. They're kind of the big ones, and they're both excellent to play. So I've played, I'm pretty sure, both of them before on the live stream, but I have not actually played them on the Atari Video Computer stream. So that's what I'm going to do right now, if I can find it. The first one I'm going to show you is available on Steam, and let me actually look it up in the store. There we go. This is called the Atari Vault, and it is a really high quality version of both arcade games and 2600 games. There are a few issues with multiplayer on some of the games, unfortunately Centipede being one of them. But still, overall, it's a really excellent version of games to play. It has input controller support and what have you. As you can see, you can add scan lines, you can take away scan lines. It has all sorts of nice options to it. And overall, it's just a really excellent compilation for this. I still don't have a paddle controller for the PC, but hey, can't have everything. It's a little better using the thumbsticks, but even so, it tends to either be too slow. Like if you have to course correct quickly and get across the map, it's pretty hard to retain accuracy when you do that. But otherwise, for kind of minor, you can nudge it pretty close to where you'd want it to be. So like I say, so long as you don't have to find yourself on the other side of the map quickly, you're generally okay. Alright. So, as you can see, you've got paddle. The feature on this is steerable ball catch, which means you catch it. The ball can be invisible or none. The game breakout, timed breakout, breakthrough, so the various kind of game modes that it's got. You could do one player or two player and what have you. It's got, like I said, a really good large number of 2600 games for it. just about anything you'd want it to do. And like I say, you've got the manuals. You can change the controls to basically whatever you want it to do. Whether it's a joystick or the fire button, you can set the keyboard controls to whatever it is you want it to be. So that's pretty high quality as well. The game, you could have like a game selection menu or classic, so you can basically, whether you have it go just like the 2600 or you want this interface on it. The flicker can be authentic. It'll actually take out the flicker as well if you want that. You've got a display arcade bezel art on and off. You can, like I say, add scan lines on and off. For vector game display, you can either have realistic, bright, bold, or standard. Then you can go full screen or, of course, windowed on this stuff as well. For audio, you've got, various kind of menu functions there that's pretty standard. I'm going to click on over and show you, because Asteroids is a good one to show, about the display here. So I'm going to show you the standard first off. You can see it's got the bezel art on it just like the original one there, and so that's pretty awesome. And like I say, I'll play well with the joystick. You can even see how they did a really nice, see that little kind of glowiness across the scan lines? How it blooms just a little bit? You never got that on, say, the PlayStation 1 version of it, because they just didn't really have that level of accuracy and power. They didn't think about it, really, at the time. But you can also take it off if you want it to just be pure without it. But this is probably what it looked like more when you were actually playing it in the arcade, with a little bit of bloom on the Asteroid machine itself. Now, this bloom is not realistic. I mean, there's no actual vector display going on, because vector graphics just don't exist. But they emulated this stuff into the game in a way that is really nice. And like I say, they had that bold version as well, so you could actually have like if you are used to playing Asteroids on a blown-out monitor, or if you want to emulate a blown-out monitor, say for kind of a stand-up unit or something like that maybe you have, if you have a MAME unit or, arcade unit that's hooked up to Steam or what have you, you can actually just go ahead and play all this stuff, and it's really nicely done. I mean, you can just see that this plays just really high quality. And the other nice thing about it is, on most of the games, like I say, there's a few bugs that they have yet to address, unfortunately. But most of these games will play two-player online. So if you want to friend up someone on your Steam friends list, you can just play, trade back and forth Asteroids with them and set high scores and do competitions and all that sort of thing. You can get the Atari Vault really cheap. By the way, this is the same Atari... Oh, there we go. Oh, I didn't hyperspace in time. This is the same Atari Vault that is coming with the VCS. Probably the reason for that is they should just do what works, and this clearly works. Let me go switch this over to bold, and you can see what I'm talking about. In terms of the vector graphics on the display. See, look how crazy that looks, huh? If you had a big blown-out monitor there, you can actually do that. Simulate the playing Asteroids without your glasses on, I guess. And then we switch it over to bright. And you can see that's really just not great, but it's there if you want it. Particularly if you have like a low quality monitor or something like that. Maybe you would want to do something like this. I would not recommend it. Like I say, I believe in the standard, or you can also set it to none, and I'll show you what that looks like too, if you just want a pure gameplay experience on that. This is without any bloom or kind of graphics overlay at all. Alright, so let me take a look at our chat quick here, see if we got anything. Yeah, the Centipede, it's really a bummer that Centipede is one of the ones that has the most problems, because Centipede is just such a great game to play two-player, but otherwise it's pretty cool. Druidsfire used Nesticle a lot? Yeah, I did too back in the day. You still have old Super Nintendo games, but no system to play them, Ponton. Well, you can get a Super Nintendo for 50, 60 bucks nowadays if you want to get one. I'm just saying. Still have a PS2 sitting in a box collecting dust. I still have my PS2. I actually use it as a DVD player up until, I guess, I kept it out, hooked up to my TV, because I do like a lot of the retro collections. There were a ton of them for PlayStation 2, including like the Taito collection, the Capcom collections, the Activision, Atari, Data East, Metal Slug, the SNK collections. I mean, there was a ton. Oh, and one other one too, the Intellivision collections, which came out around the same time as these Atari ones. This is an Atari show, so I'm not going into that. But there was a similar thing to this for the Intellivision that's actually quite high quality as well. Hey, Cleavebeard, nice to see you here. So let me see about playing. I'll play Tempest here. I love Tempest. It's one of my favorite games. I kind of wish they would let you use. I think I'd have to go into the controller to set using it without the thumbstick, but because the thumbstick is okay for quick moving around, but it's not super precise for trying to get into the right lane here. So like trying to get into one in particular can be a little tricky. There we go. Oh, what hit me? Yeah, it is really hard to play Tempest without the spinny controller. You really need like a paddle or something like that for it. I actually find using the arrow keys is a little more precise for this sort of thing. It's a little hard to do this with the thumbstick, but if you get into the hang of it, you can do okay on it. Just not a great game of Tempest. But anyway, I still set one of my own high scores. The hours I lost to Tempest, yeah, you can see that that's nothing compared to my current top score of 22,480, starting from rank 1. So anyway, but you can see this is a really accurate collection and quite high quality. They even have Sprint, Space Duel, Red Baron. The Red Baron is actually a game that I never really played in the arcade, but I have found myself playing it a heck of a lot on the Atari Vault here, because it looks cool and it is fun. The Atari Vault really focuses, in terms of the arcade classics, on the vector graphics games, which is awesome, because they've done an excellent, excellent job with these vector graphics games. But anyway, I love Red Baron. It's a game that I never really played in the arcade back in the day. But man, have I gotten to enjoy it on this Atari Vault. It is really fun. Ah. 1980, which is really pretty early. You figure Asteroids was 78. Star Wars, of course, wasn't until... Well, I guess Star Wars was, what, 81? 80, 81? So this is around the same time, but still really a pretty high-quality vector graphics game. That's a lot of fun to play. It was one I just had never even heard of until the Atari Vault came about. I mean, I guess I knew it existed, but I've never actually seen it in the wild at all. So that's a pretty fun game, in my opinion. Alright, so that really is the Atari Vault. I'm not going to go through all these games, but as you can see, there's just a ton of really good games here. They, of course, have Missile Command, and Major Havoc is actually one that's worth playing here as well. This is another vector graphics game that I had never heard of until it came out. Oh, really? That's cool. I love that it's got this weird little Pong thing on it. I have to tell you, I'm not very good at Major Havoc, so I'm not going to do... I can usually get past this first level, and then I get stuck on the second level. This game has kind of got a very strange sort of way of moving around it. So it's a really interesting kind of mix of like Galaga, almost like a Galaga-style Space Invaders mixed with some kind of odd Berserk-style almost platforming game. It's really a weird one. Of course, this game gets really difficult. You can't shoot or anything, because, hey, why would you bring a laser gun with you into an enemy base? You're also timed in a way that's really difficult. At least I have found to be really difficult. Turn into a nice skeleton. Yeah, I don't know if I've ever been able to actually get through the second level here, so you're just gonna have to watch me embarrassing myself on the stream, because, I don't know, man, this game is freaking hard. I bet there are people who are really good at it. I am not one of them. But then I never really played this in the arcade, either. I can't say that they never had it, but I don't really recall ever really playing it, though. Ah! Okay. Oh no! Ah! This game, I tell you, man, this game. Lunar Lander's fun, Gravatar, Crystal Castles, and Centipede. I guess just because this is the final day here, we'll do a game of Centipede, which, what can I say? I am a Centipede nerd. I love Centipede. We have a thing going on among some people I know. Kind of constantly competing on Centipede here. Who will reign supreme? Would encourage you. I should actually set up a Centipede tournament for the Atari Video Computer stream at some point, just because it would be fun. Ah. Pathetic. I always play at my worst when I'm on stream. That's all there is to it. I really have been playing this one a lot. On the next compilation I'm going to talk to you guys about here in just a few minutes. But I think it's worth noting that if it's true that this compilation is what's going to be coming built into the new Atari VCS, which goes for pre-sale on May 30th, it's a pretty good compilation to start with. I mean, presumably they still want to sell you some of their classic Atari games, right? I mean, they are a company here. They gotta make money. But it's a pretty good way to start, I think, to just kind of have all this the Atari Vault as a pack-in. It's a pretty good way to do it. I'm going to try to not embarrass myself with a better score. I don't know if there is, I mean, you know, your favorite arcade game is always a personal choice. For some people, it's going to be like Miss Pac-Man or Pac-Man. For others, it'll be Asteroids, because Asteroids is a really high-quality game, too. I think it probably is Centipede for me. If I had, well, geez, can I even say that, though? Currently, it's definitely Centipede as my #1 go-to retro game. But there is a time as well where I have just put in countless hours on Galaga. Galaga is just one of those games that never gets old, or rarely gets old. I've played so much Galaga, it's not even funny. But that's not an Atari game, so I'm not really talking about that here. The trick to a high score on Centipede, and it's easier said than done, is to hit those scorpions. Because they are worth 1,000 points each, which is a lot. It also prevents these things from coming down at you. But if you can hit those scorpions, it gets you 1,000 points each time you hit it. So it's nice if you've got basically a path up the way to the top that you can kind of go and wait for them. So when they come through, you know what you can go for. Ah, dang it. I've put in so many hours of this. The thing about Centipede I tend to find is you have lucky games, and then you'll go on a cold streak, and then you'll go on a hot streak, and then you'll have a cold streak again. I seem to be on a bit of a cold streak right now. I'm just not in the zone, as it were. Oh well. That's an acceptable game, I guess, for that. You can see my high score is 27,000 on the Atari Vault. Now, I have it set a little bit more difficult as well, because you can set the difficulty on this one. So then, like I said, you've got the Atari, you've got a lot of the kind of classic Atari games that have been released over the years, in addition to some ones that are less common as well. So that's Sprint Master, one I picked up, last weekend. Secret Quest. This is, by the way, the last commercially released game by Atari for the 2600. There have been homebrews and some other things to kind of muddy it up a little bit, but Secret Quest is one of the last ones there. So, not terrible. Like I say, this is a really pretty high quality compilation. Oh, it's just trying to play two-player here. Which I do not have another person to play with right now. Night Driver. This is a really fun one. I like Night Driver. This is a classic paddle game. It's a little hard to do on the controller here, but ah, man, I'm terrible at night. I'm playing this with a paddle. It's much better. But anyway. So by the way, if you're listening here and you're in a position to do so, make a paddle for the PC. That's actually, frankly, one of the other reasons I'm excited for the VCS here being re-releases. It might finally give us an opportunity to get a paddle controller. This is a fun game. I actually just played this for the first time. I had never played this one back in the day. Oh, here we go. Okay. So pretty, this was a late period game, so I had never really played it back when it came out. I think it came out in the late 80s. I was always more of an Enduro fan, but it's got some kind of weird mechanic where you're like blowing up other cars. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. I'm not actually sure what that button does either, frankly. But it is called Fatal Run, so I assume you want to destroy the other cars. You have like a kind of a meter there that sort of determines a whole bunch of different things. You're going from city to city, almost outrun or cruising style. And you also have an ability, almost RPG style, to buy things and then upgrade. You have to manage your fuel and what have you. "200 miles an hour. Woohoo! This one's a little bit of a thumb killer, but it's pretty cool. No! And I blew up. Pretty cool music, too, for the Atari. You loved playing Indy 500 and Tank? I did, too, actually. Let me see if I can find... I assume you mean combat for that. Indy 500. Do they have Indy 500? No, doesn't look like it. But yes, I like that very much. Maybe races, actually, Indy 500. Oh yeah, it's this one again. See, I need a second player to play online, and then we could have a real Indy 500 race. This is Indy 500. The Sears Telegames version of it. Maybe they would have had to pay for the Indy 500 license. They didn't want to do that. I think I'm going to win this race. See, this is my kind of competition. The other guy just sits there and lets me win. That is how you play a competition. Alright. So anyway, that is ultimately then the collection here, and you can sort as well if you want to. And then, like I say, it's got multiplayer, which is actually kind of nice. So let's say I wanted to do... I'm sure nobody's actually looking right now, but just in case, you can host a game of race. You can do a match or an invite. It can invite someone on my Steam list or just do that. You can see if someone wants to host with you. Unfortunately, you know, similar to a lot of these online Atari games, and the one that I'm going to talk about next suffers the same fate. They just don't have a huge following in terms of being able to just randomly match up with people online. There just aren't enough people playing these games. But I'm really glad they have it because it allows you to invite friends. In this case on Steam, it allows you to invite any of your Steam buddies to join with you on this stuff. And for the most part, they all work well. And then on the PlayStation version, you have the other one here, which I guess I will talk about next. I wonder if I can get that going on my... do something a little strange here, see if I can actually get this working. There is a way to PS4 remote play. I'm going to see if I can actually get this going on the stream with the PS4 Remote Play. Maybe isn't going to work, but if it does work, it'll be really cool. I'm actually having to update really quickly the PS4 Remote Play Wizard. Yes, you can play PS4 games on your PC. Okay. Connecting to the PS4. You hear my PS4 turning on in the background. Oh, thank you so much, Druidsfire, for those bits. That's very, very kind of you. Alright, so I have got PS4 Remote Play up. Now can I get it? There we go. Now can I get it on here? Let's see. Looks like it might. Yeah, awesome. So this is my PlayStation 4. It's going to be kind of choppy just because I'm doing this over like kind of a weird Wi-Fi thing. But it'll be good to just kind of show you what it is I'm here to show you, which is the Atari Flashbacks Volume Classics Volume 1 and Volume 2. Volume 1 and 2 both have similar things to the Atari Vault, but have their own versions, kind of own things that separate them out. So if you are not a PC gamer and you're looking for the definitive Atari compilation currently around, I would highly recommend that you check out this compilation from At Games and Code Mystics, Atari Flashback Classics Volume 1. As you can see here, it's got a lot of the same ones that the Atari Vault does for Steam, you know, and also a lot of nice PlayStation or 2600 games. It does offer multiplayer on this sort of thing as well. So let's see if I can join a game, or you can host a game. And again, you got to see if anyone's willing to actually join you, which again is not typically the case. But you can also, if you have PlayStation friends, you know, connected to your account, you can just direct invite them. And so as long as you both have a copy of the game, then you can just go ahead and do that. So it's really all there is to it. Oh wow, I remember this one. I forgot how to play it though. There's a way... I would have to look up the instructions on Stunt Cycle. I can't remember how to play this game. You want to try to land on that piece there. Well, okay, apparently I need to look up the instructions. But anyway, that's that. So it's a really nice set as well. Let me show Air-Sea Battle. That's a fun one. I bet a lot of you probably remember Air-Sea Battle. I used to play this a lot with my twin brother back in the day because it was just kind of a fun game that even little kids can play. Let me actually turn the volume down a little bit on this. There we go. It's not really choppy like this, like I'm seeing on XSplit. It's like on my computer, it's actually running smoothly. But when it's trying to stream from the PlayStation 4 to the PC, and then from the PC to XSplit, and then XSplit back out to Twitch, it's causing some kind of frame rate issue. So it's not really looking like that when I'm playing it, but that's fine. No biggie there. And you can see they did a really nice job on emulating this stuff as well. I really like Black Widow. I used to play this in the arcade quite a bit too. It's sort of like Smash TV before there was Smash TV in some ways. I don't know why a spider cares so much about money, but it does. Ah. You want to try to get those things before they hatch, but I'm not doing such a good job right now. Ah, dang. Not my best game, but I am playing this, I'm actually not bad. I've got some arcade high scores over the years on Black Widow. Don't take my money. You're very capitalist. Ah! Oh, man. Those things are like smart bombs, right? They'll blow you up. Yeah, you can see my best is 55-8 so far on this, which isn't a terrible score. All right. So anyway, this is Atari Flashback Volume 1, and now let me move to Atari Flashback Volume 2 and show you that one here as well. There's a Atari Flashback Volume 3 that is set to, well, originally was released to come out by the spring, and then it was the summer, and now it looks like it's maybe going to be this fall, so I'm not quite sure what the holdup is in terms of why this hasn't been released yet, but it's coming. And it's not terrible either. So the main thing is Volume 1 has like the centipedes, Volume 2 has asteroids. And Red Baron, Sprint, Major Havoc, Crystal Castles, Missile Command Breakout. A lot of the ones that, you know, we've seen in the Atari Vault, which is really kind of a compilation of both of these. But of course, Atari Vault is for console, or Atari Vault is for PC. Oh, splat. Keep forgetting how to play this one. I've got to deploy my parachute. There we go. Yay, I made it! I'm a survivor! Yay! Really, I don't get credit? Okay, there we go. Yeah. Skydiver. I actually like this game. It's fun in its own dumb way. Oh no, splat. Ah! I keep on trying to hit the button to deploy the parachute and actually have to push the down key, which is why I keep splatting. But hey, what do you do? Destroy you. It's kind of a loud game, isn't it? At least coming through loud in my ears. There we go. It's that motorboat, that's what's causing the loud. Alright, well, I'm going to shut that one off because it's a little on the loud side. Let's see, what would be a good one to play? As I probably get ready to wrap things up here in just a little bit. Oh, here's one that's actually kind of fun. This is using a keypad controller, so I'm not actually sure how it determines it. But this is for those... Oh, here we go. For those DDO peeps out there, it's like the Reaver puzzle. Oh, let's see, how do I... Oops. Okay, so one is in the right place and the right number. So let's go 2, 3, 4. Right place, wrong number. So the 2, so let's say 5 to 6. And there we go. There's the code. Yeah, so it's basically Mastermind, code breaker, and it uses a keyboard controller. It's like the Reaver puzzle. If you want to get a little Reaver practice in, it's not a terrible one to do. I'm pretty good at it, but again, I've played a lot of DDO. So. Alright, why don't we wrap up with Asteroids Deluxe, which was never as good as Asteroids 1. But isn't terrible. Man, if you thought Asteroids was hard, Asteroids Deluxe is even harder. I usually turn off the overlay, although this is arcade perfect. I mean, that is the way they did it in the arcade too, is they had that kind of difficult to see piece over it. Oh yeah, here we go. There's the second button. I had to figure out which one the shield button was. I really, really hate that thing that splits up into multiple aliens. That thing is the bane of my freaking existence. That's the reason I could never get the pieces unlocked in that PSP game I was telling you about earlier. Alright. So I guess why don't I play one more here, and I will do Crystal Castles. This is a pretty fun game too. Little tricky to play with a thumbstick as well, but not too bad. Fun fact for those who know where I used to work, Turbine had an actual Crystal Castles machine in the office. Ah. This used, similar to Centipede, this used a, kind of a rollerball. That's what trackball. That's what I'm trying to think of. So trying to use this on a thumbstick is a little weird, but not too bad. You can use the arrow keys as well. You could jump, although half the time when I try to jump over them I would fail. But try it. Yep, there we go. Skeleton's kind of hard to beat. Yay, there we go. Yes, thank you. I can't believe my brain skipped out on trackball. But yes, there we are. That's what happens when you get old. Yep. You can't remember things from your youth. Back in the day. I don't know why these aliens like little red dots and apples so much. Are they supposed to be drugs? Oh, I gotta get way up to the top there. Ah. Alright, so I think that is going to wrap it up here. Level 26. I haven't actually played a lot of Crystal Castles. I don't hate Crystal Castles, but it's just not a great game for me. It just never really worked for me all that much. Alright, I'm going to wrap that up then, and I am going to wrap up the Atari Video Computer stream. Like I say, this will be the last show until early August after Gen Con. Oh, let me do one more pickup here. I got this week. This is my eBay find of the week. BMX Airmaster, as you can see, still sealed completely. The box has got a few little dings and dents, particularly on the underside here, unfortunately. But this is a still sealed copy of BMX Airmaster for the 2600 and 7800. This was a late 80s. I believe 80... It doesn't have a year on it, but I believe it's around 86, 87, something like that. And you if you can actually find it, there's two versions of this. The one I have, oops, is the less valuable version. This is the boxed version released by TNT Games. There's a second version that got released by Atari for just a short period of time. And if you can find the Atari version of this, it's worth several $100s. This one I picked up, it's really worth about $20-30. I happened to find a good deal on it where I picked it up for 12. So that was my good find of the past week. There is actually one other find I picked up too, but that's the bummer. I so far appear to have had my first eBay scammer. Someone was selling 2,600 games by the cart. I saw a Spectravision Gangster Alley, and I was like, sweet, $6, free shipping? Hell yeah. So I went and paid that on May 7th, and I have yet to hear back from the guy. He hasn't shipped it. He's taken my money, but he hasn't shipped it or anything. So just yesterday I finally opened up a resolution dispute with eBay to be like, can I have the thing, please? And if the guy ships it, hey, that's cool, stuff happens, you know. But this is the very first time that I've actually been able to, I've actually had an issue with an eBay purchase. So I don't have that to wrap up the stream here as well. But what am I going to do in the coming months during my vacation? I'm going to have my son with me. So I will not be playing as much 2600 stuff, although he likes to, it's kind of cute. He tends to be like, hey, Daddy, let's go find Ataris. Because he knows that I'm into Ataris. And so a couple of times this summer, we'll go to flea markets, and he'll be like, Daddy, let's go find Ataris. And so we'll go find Ataris, and sometimes, like for my birthday last summer, we went to the flea market, I gave him some money, he bought me an Atari cart, and then got it to me for my birthday, which was really kind of him. A lot of it is, of course, buying toys for him as well, but that's half the fun of having a 6-year-old, isn't it? Is buying the kid all the toys that you want to play with if you were 6. So, but yeah, it's pretty cute. So I'll be doing that. I will hopefully be able to find an Atari 2600 Junior by the next time we meet. That's on my list of things to do. I'd love to be able to find a Stellar Track and a Submarine Commander, as you saw there. Those are the Telegames exclusive releases for the 2600. That along with Stellar Track. I actually found them at the flea market that same weekend I bought the Atari, or the Intellivision, so for last weekend's show. But unfortunately, they wanted too much money for it. So I couldn't, even though I have never seen the carts elsewhere, I couldn't spend the money because they're just a little bit too much. Part of buying all these carts is you got to buy them at a price that's actually reasonable and not just throw all your money around. So anyway, that is my plan. Hopefully I'll have a lot of good pickups and that sort of thing for you when we next return in early August. I will be back next Wednesday, this upcoming Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern, for the final FMV Theater. We're going to be delving into two awesome games, Her Story and The Infectious Madness of Dr. Decker. Those are the two we're going to do before we wrap up FMV Theater on Wednesday. Thank you so much, everyone who's donated to the Maple Farm Sanctuary. I really do appreciate it. I am taking a couple months off here unless my son wants to do some Minecraft streaming or casual stuff like that, but it's not really going to be organized. So if you are subscribing to the channel, you might want to consider dropping it for a couple of months. Until I come back. Unless you want the emotes or whatever, it's fine if you want to keep subscribing, but there's not really going to be any content for you, so I'm totally okay if you feel like dropping your subscription. And I do want to thank everyone for helping out the Maple Farm Sanctuary and for helping me out and really making this a fun channel. So I'll see you on Wednesday. If I don't see you Wednesday, I'll see you in early August. Thank you so much for being here. Signing out with Season 1 of the Atari Video Computer stream. Have fun.